February 14th, 2000, Valentine's Day. In most American homes, the morning began with flowers, candy, and love notes. But in a small house just outside Shelby, North Carolina, the day started with panic. A 9-year-old girl named Asha Degree was gone, her bed empty, her backpack missing, and no one, not her parents, not her brother, not the neighbors, could explain how a child simply vanished into the dark. What made this case unlike any other wasn't just her age, or that she was a bright, happy, deeply loved child with no history of running away. It was a setting, a small, tight-knit community where people didn't lock their doors. And the circumstances, Asha left her home in the middle of a stormy night, walking alone down a desolate highway, vanishing into history. This is the story of Asha Degree, a mystery that has haunted investigators, divided theories, and left a family searching for answers for over 2 decades. Before we begin, if you're new here, make sure you subscribe to the channel, not just to follow cases like this one, but to help keep stories like Asha's from fading away. Shelby, North Carolina, population around 20,000. The year 2000 was simpler. People still trusted their neighbors. Kids played outside until sunset. Harold and Aquila Degree worked hard to build a stable life for their children, Asha and her older brother O'Brien. Harold drove trucks for a living. Aquila worked at a local factory. They lived on Oakcrest Drive, a small street lined with modest, single-story homes. Asha was the kind of child people remembered. Teachers called her polite, well-behaved, ambitious. She played basketball for her school team, the Falston Elementary Bulldogs, wearing jersey number 44. At church, she was known as quiet but thoughtful. Her parents kept her sheltered from the internet, cable TV, and most outside influences, a deliberate choice. To the Degrees, family meant protection. They believed that keeping their children close to home would keep them safe. February 13th, 2000, the night before Valentine's Day. It was cold, windy, and raining hard. The power flickered across parts of Shelby as thunder rolled through the hills. Asha's basketball team had just lost their final game of the season by a single point. She'd been fouled out in the second half and was heartbroken. Her coach remembered her crying on the bench, hiding her face under her jersey. But that night, she seemed back to normal. Her mother said she laughed while watching TV with her brother. Around 8:30 p.m., both kids took baths and went to bed in the room they shared. The storm outside intensified. Rain pounded against the windows. Tree branches brushed the siding. Around 12:30 a.m., Harold came home from his second job and checked on the kids. Both were asleep. He watched some television, then went to bed. At 2:30 a.m., something changed. O'Brien, just 10 years old, heard Asha's bed creak. He assumed she turned in her sleep. When he looked up again, she was gone. At 3:30 a.m., multiple drivers on Highway 18, south of Shelby, reported seeing a young girl walking alone in the rain. She was wearing a long-sleeve white shirt and white pants. Clothing later confirmed to match what Asha wore to bed. One driver, Deborah Turner, slowed down, thinking it was strange. A child, in the middle of the storm, walking purposefully down the road with a book bag slung over her shoulder. Turner turned her car around, concerned. When her headlights illuminated the shoulder again, the girl ran into the woods. That was the last confirmed sighting of Asha Degree alive. By 6:30 a.m., when Aquila went to wake Asha for school, her bed was empty. Her backpack, shoes, and some of her favorite clothes were gone. At first, she thought maybe Asha had gone to her grandmother's house across the street. But when she wasn't there, panic set in. By 6:40 a.m., Aquila called Harold. He raced home and called 911. Within hours, police volunteers and dogs were combing the woods and fields near Highway 18. Helicopters circled overhead. Search dogs picked up Asha's scent, but it vanished abruptly near a shed along the roadside. Inside that shed, searchers found a few candy wrappers and a pencil that might have been Asha's, but no sign of the girl herself. The community rallied. Flyers went up. The local news station broke the story by noon. But despite hundreds of volunteers and several days of searching, there were no new leads. Investigators ruled out the possibility of a forced abduction from the home. There was no sign of a break-in, and the family's dogs hadn't barked. That left two grim possibilities. Either Asha chose to leave, or someone lured her out. Her parents insisted she was happy, with no reason to run away. But investigators uncovered signs that Asha had packed intentionally. A few personal items, some clothes, and her favorite basketball uniform. It didn't look like a child escaping a bad home. It looked like someone who believed they were going somewhere safe. Days turned into weeks, then months. By the summer of 2001, 18 months after Asha's disappearance, a shocking discovery broke the silence. Construction workers digging 26 miles north in Burke County unearthed a plastic bag buried off the highway. Inside was a book bag, wrapped in a second trash bag. It contained Asha's name and her school papers. But that location was far beyond where she'd last been seen. Someone had placed it there deliberately. The FBI confirmed it was hers. But no DNA, fingerprints, or physical evidence pointed to a suspect. It was as if whoever took her knew exactly what they were doing and how to erase their trail. Every year since 2000, Asha's parents have held a walk, retracing the 9-mile route she was believed to have taken that night. They call it a walk of faith, from their home to the spot where she was last seen. Her mother, Aquila, has said in interviews, "We're not supposed to bury our children. We just want to bring her home." For them, the pain hasn't dulled with time. Her room remains untouched, filled with trophies, photographs, and memories of the little girl who left in the rain. 25 years later, Asha Degree's disappearance remains one of the most haunting mysteries in American history. A child who vanished without a trace, seemingly by her own will, yet guided by something no one could see. In the next hour, we'll explore the evidence, the contradictions, and the people who may have crossed her path that night. Because behind every mystery like this one, there's always more than one truth. The morning of February 14th, 2000, began with confusion. By afternoon, it had become a nightmare. And by nightfall, the search for Asha Degree was national news. Reporters called it the Valentine's Day mystery. A child who left her bed in the middle of a storm and disappeared without a sound. But beneath the headlines, investigators were faced with a puzzle that made less sense the more they studied it. Because Asha hadn't been kidnapped in the traditional sense. She wasn't taken from her room, and no one saw a struggle. She walked out, into the rain, into the darkness, and was gone. In missing person cases, the first 2 days are critical. Detectives knew that every hour mattered, especially for a 9-year-old girl. More than 60 officers joined the search. Volunteers combed through woods, drainage ditches, and abandoned buildings. They used helicopters, infrared cameras, and tracking dogs. The dogs followed Asha's scent from her home along the shoulder of Highway 18 until it vanished. Not faded, vanished. That abrupt cutoff suggested she'd either entered a vehicle or crossed an area where scent couldn't be tracked, like asphalt soaked by heavy rain. Still, there was hope. Children who wander away often turn up alive within the first day. But as night fell again, hope turned to dread. Every year since 2000, Asha's parents have held a walk, retracing the 9-mile route she was believed to have taken that night. They call it a walk of faith, from their home to the spot where she was last seen. Her mother, Aquila, has said in interviews, "We're not supposed to bury our children. We just want to bring her home." For them, the pain hasn't dulled with time. Her room remains untouched, filled with trophies, photographs, and memories of the little girl who left in the rain. 25 years later, Asha Degree's disappearance remains one of the most haunting mysteries in American history. A child who vanished without a trace, seemingly by her own will, yet guided by something no one could see. In the next hour, we'll explore the evidence, the contradictions, and the people who may have crossed her path that night. Because behind every mystery like this one, there's always more than one truth. The morning of February 14th, 2000, began with confusion. By afternoon, it had become a nightmare. And by nightfall, the search for Asha Degree was national news. Reporters called it the Valentine's Day mystery. A child who left her bed in the middle of a storm and disappeared without a sound. But beneath the headlines, investigators were faced with a puzzle that made less sense the more they studied it. Because Asha hadn't been kidnapped in the traditional sense. She wasn't taken from her room, and no one saw a struggle. She walked out, into the rain, into the darkness, and was gone. In missing person cases, the first 2 days are critical. Detectives knew that every hour mattered, especially for a 9-year-old girl. More than 60 officers joined the search. Volunteers combed through woods, drainage ditches, and abandoned buildings. They used helicopters, infrared cameras, and tracking dogs. The dogs followed Asha's scent from her home, along the shoulder of Highway 18, until it vanished. Not faded, vanished. That abrupt cutoff suggested she'd either entered a vehicle or crossed an area where scent couldn't be tracked, like asphalt soaked by heavy rain. Still, there was hope. Children who wander away often turn up alive within the first day. But as night fell again, hope turned to dread. 2 drivers had seen her that night, and their accounts would become the backbone of the investigation. Deborah Turner, a local motorist, told police she saw a small figure walking south along Highway 18 around 3:30 a.m. She slowed her car, thinking it was a teenager. As she turned around to check, the figure darted off the road into the woods. Another driver, Roy Blanton, saw her minutes later near the same stretch. He, too, thought it was odd, a young girl alone in the pouring rain. Both describe her outfit in detail. A long-sleeved white shirt, white pants, and what looked like a book bag. It matched exactly what her parents said was missing. The location they described, about a mile from her home, placed Asha walking toward Highway 18's intersection with Highway 180. That direction puzzled investigators. It was away from town, away from her school, away from everything familiar. So where was she going? By the 3rd day, the Degree family's faces were everywhere. Newspapers, flyers, television reports. The FBI joined the case, classifying Asha as an endangered missing child. Community members formed search parties. They walked cornfields, checked sheds, even searched church basements. On February 17th, investigators found a hair bough believed to be Asha's near the edge of the highway. But it was small comfort, a child's item lying alone in the mud. Despite thousands of man-hours, there were no further clues, no ransom calls, no sightings, nothing. It was as if she had walked out of existence. Months later, when the book bag was unearthed in Burke County, 26 miles north of her last known location. It reignited interest in the case. The bag contained her name written on papers, a library book checked out from her school, and clothing consistent with what was missing. But the discovery raised more questions than it answered. How did the bag end up buried, wrapped in 2 plastic trash bags, in a rural construction site far from home? And more importantly, when was it buried? The FBI analyzed the materials but found no DNA or trace evidence that could point to a suspect. To the Degree family, it was a sign that someone had hidden it on purpose, maybe to throw investigators off. Someone who wanted Asha to stay lost. Investigators began to examine every possibility. Could she have been lured? Could someone have contacted her, maybe promised her something? In 2000, Asha's family didn't own a computer. She didn't use the internet or have access to social media. So if someone had reached her, it would have been through direct contact at school, church, or basketball practice. Detectives questioned teachers, coaches, and classmates. No one reported strange behavior or suspicious adults. But one thing stood out. Asha had recently read the book The Whipping Boy, about 2 children running away on an adventure. It made some wonder she'd been inspired by that story, if her journey began as a child's misunderstanding of independence. But that theory clashed with the chilling evidence of what came after. Over the years, several leads surfaced, most ending in disappointment. But in 2016, the FBI announced a significant one. A witness had come forward saying they saw a dark green early 1990s Ford Thunderbird or Lincoln Mark IV parked near where Asha was last seen. Asha was reportedly near the car that night. That tip reignited public attention and a wave of speculation. Was the driver the one who took her? Or was it someone who offered her help, only to become her captor? The FBI released a composite sketch of the vehicle and asked for information about 2 items found with Asha's bag, a Dr. Seuss book from her school, and a New Kids on the Block t-shirt that didn't belong to her. Someone, somewhere, had seen those items before. But the lead, like so many others, went cold. The longer a case goes unsolved, the more theories grow. Some claimed Asha was taken by a passing trucker. Others believed she was kept alive for years. Psychics offered visions. Self-proclaimed witnesses came forward, each story contradicting the last. Police followed every credible lead, even traveling out of state. But no trace of Asha ever surfaced. Through it all, her parents never stopped believing she was alive. In an interview, her mother said, "We've never found her body. So until we do, I believe she's out there somewhere." 20 years later, Shelby still remembers. Every February, the same roads are lined with people walking, holding photos of a smiling little girl with bright eyes and dimples. Her disappearance changed the way local families lived. Parents began locking doors. Kids stopped walking alone. The Degrees remained in their home, the same house Asha walked out that night, refusing to leave in case she ever found her way back. Inside, her room looks almost the same. Stuffed animals, basketball trophies, a photo of her in her green team uniform. It's as if time for them has stopped at 2:30 a.m. on February 14th, 2000. A child's footprints in the mud, a backpack buried miles away, a green car that may have been there or may have been a ghost in memory. As investigators dig deeper, they begin to question the unthinkable, that Asha may have known her abductor. In the next hour, we'll follow the trail of theories, suspects, and long-awaited confessions that would emerge years later, and how one chilling possibility began to take shape. That someone in her own community may have lured her into the dark By the time a decade had passed since Asha Degree disappeared, the case had grown colder than anyone wanted to admit. No body, no confirmed suspects, no resolution. But to the detectives who refused to give up, one thing was certain. Someone, somewhere, knew what happened that night. And for years, they had kept that secret buried, like Asha's backpack and ground. Cold cases are defined by silence, the absence of answers. But in Shelby, North Carolina, silence had become a kind of noise. Whispers, theories, rumors. Every few months, someone would claim to have seen a girl who looked like Asha in a shopping mall, at a rest stop, even in another state. None of the tips led anywhere. Still, detectives kept the case alive. Files grew thicker. The reward fund, created by the Degree family, slowly increased, climbing to over $45,000. And in 2015, the FBI decided to take another hard look. A new team with new technology and new eyes. They re-examined every photograph, every statement, every inch of the evidence collected in 2000. What they found didn't answer the case, but it reignited it. In 2016, the FBI's renewed push brought a name into focus: Donald Ferguson. He was a convicted sex offender, serving time for the 1990s murder of another young North Carolina girl named Shalonda Poole. Ferguson had lived in the region around the time Asha vanished, and though no direct evidence linked him to her disappearance, investigators quietly reviewed his movements, his employment, and his vehicles. That same year, a separate lead emerged from Cleveland County Jail. A man claimed to know what happened to Asha. He said her remains had been buried off Highway 18, the very road she'd walked that night. Police searched the area with cadaver dogs and excavation equipment. They dug for days, but nothing was found, just red clay, rainwater, and disappointment. The inmate's claim was deemed unreliable. Still, the idea of a local suspect, someone familiar with Shelby's back roads and wooded terrain, refused to fade. Every major clue in the case, the last sighting, the shed, the backpack, formed a pattern when mapped out. A tight cluster following Highway 18 northward, a path leading through small towns, past fields and creeks, toward the foothills of Burke County. The distance between her last confirmed location and where her backpack was buried was nearly 26 miles, too far for a child to travel on foot, especially in a storm. That simple fact told investigators something profound. At some point, she was in a vehicle. Someone had picked her up, someone who knew how to avoid detection, who could coax a 9-year-old into trusting them. Locals remembered seeing a green car that night, the one the FBI later connected to. But there was another rumor, one that never quite made headlines. Some residents claimed in the days before Asha disappeared, a man had been seen near Oak Crest Drive, sitting in his car, watching children play basketball after school. The sighting was vague, unconfirmed, but it became part of the fabric of community memory. Could that have been the same man? Could Asha, with her trusting nature and innocence, have been tricked by someone pretending to be a friend of her family, a coach, or even a good Samaritan offering a ride? No one could say for sure, but the possibility changed everything. Detectives revisited the shed where Asha's scent had disappeared. It was owned by a local contractor, now long deceased. Inside, back in 2000, they'd found candy wrappers and a pencil. Small items, easy to dismiss. But decades later, those details took on new weight. Someone had been with her, at least for a moment, before she ran into the woods. Had she realized she was in danger? Had she tried to escape? The storm that night destroyed most physical evidence, the rain washing away footprints, tire tracks, and fingerprints. For the Degree family, that storm became a kind of symbol, a reminder of how easily truth could be erased. To understand Asha's case, investigators turned to child behavior experts. Why would a 9-year-old leave home at night, in the rain, without telling anyone? Theories varied. Some said she was acting out of curiosity, chasing a fantasy of independence. Others believed she had been coerced or groomed, tricked into thinking she was meeting someone she knew. The second theory carried far more weight. Asha wasn't impulsive. She was cautious, well-behaved, and deeply connected to her parents. Something or someone made her believe she was safe enough to step outside. That was the real question haunting investigators. Who had that kind of influence over her? In 2016, after re-interviewing witnesses and combing through the FBI's updated files, agents made a public appeal. They asked anyone who had owned or driven a green 1990s Thunderbird or Lincoln Mark IV in the Shelby area to come forward. They even released photos of similar vehicles. Dozens of tips came in. None led to an arrest. But several witnesses described a man, mid-20s or early 30s at the time, seen parked near the intersection of Highway 18 and 180 around the same window of time Asha vanished. His car's description matched. The man was never identified. And in the years since, that lead remains one of the most haunting almost in FBI history. 2 decades later, Harold and Asha Degree have become symbols of endurance. They refuse to move from their home, keeping the same phone number since 2000, just in case Asha ever calls. Each year on February 14th, they organize a walk of faith, 9 miles, the same path Asha took or tried to take that night. They walk in silence, sometimes through rain, and each year strangers join them. In 2020, at the 20th anniversary, Harold told local news, "It's the not knowing that eats at you. You just want the truth, whatever it is." For them, truth is the only form of closure that matters. 2.5 decades have passed since 9-year-old Asha Degree vanished from her home in Shelby, North Carolina. 25 years of questions, 25 years of searching, and 25 years of silence that is never fully broken. But the story of Asha Degree is not one of despair. It's one of persistence, of parents who refuse to let time bury their daughter's name, and investigators who still call our case unsolved, not closed. Cold cases live in the margins of memory. Old files yellow, witnesses move away, and evidence sits in boxes under fluorescent lights. Yet, in Cleveland County, Asha's case is still active. Detectives from the FBI, North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, and the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office meet regularly, still reviewing tips that arrive by phone, email, or handwritten letter. Every so often, something new surfaces, a potential sighting, a rumor, a half-remembered confession. Most lead nowhere, but each one is treated as if it could be the missing key. For them, Asha Degree isn't a case file. She's a promise left unfulfilled. Shelby, North Carolina, has changed since 2000. New houses stand where tobacco fields once stretched. But nearly every local still remembers that Valentine's Day morning. Ask anyone in town, and they can tell you where they were when they heard Asha was missing. Some recall the helicopters sweeping over the trees, others the candlelight vigils outside First Missionary Baptist Church. The community's relationship with the case has evolved from panic to sorrow to quiet resolve. For many, Asha Degree is not just a girl who disappeared. She's a reason they keep a porch light on at night. Investigators still struggle with the same set of puzzles. Why would a cautious, disciplined 9-year-old walk into a storm at 2 a.m., who buried her backpack miles away, and why nothing else was left with it. And how could a child travel so far without being seen again? Every theory holds weight, but none hold proof. Theory 1, the runaway, that she left on her own, inspired by adventure stories. Theory 2, the lure, that someone persuaded her to meet them, using trust or deceit. Theory 3, the interception, that she was abducted by a stranger once she reached the highway. Each fits pieces of the puzzle, yet none form a complete picture. What's known for certain is that her disappearance required opportunity, timing, and knowledge of the area. And those three things rarely come together by accident. In 2020, the FBI created a dedicated digital case profile, releasing newly enhanced images of what Asha might look like today. She would be 34 years old, her face mature, but her eyes unchanged. Agents also re-examined every physical item recovered from the scene and from her buried backpack. Advances in DNA extraction, trace fiber analysis, and soil comparison opened small new avenues of testing. Nothing definitive has surfaced yet, but with modern forensics, the possibility remains that a microscopic trace, something invisible in 2000, could still reveal the truth. For Harold and Asha Degree, time has not healed anything. They've said they still set a place for Asha at family gatherings. They still buy her a birthday gift every August 5th. And every year on Valentine's Day, they walk. The walk of faith begins before dawn. 9 miles, one for each year of her life when she vanished. People from across the state join them. Neighbors, church members, sometimes strangers who only know her story from a headline. They walk in silence. Only the sound of shoes on wet pavement and the rustle of signs bear her photo, a bright-eyed fourth grader in a basketball jersey. At the end of the walk, they pray for answers, for peace, for the child who left in the rain. There is a particular kind of grief reserved for the missing. It's not final like death. It's a wound that never closes. Parents of missing children describe living in 2 timelines, one where they continue life's routine, and another where they are forever trapped in the day their child vanished. Asha Degree once said, "People tell you to move on, but how do you move on when you don't know if she's cold, hungry, or scared?" That uncertainty shapes every decision, every day. For her parents, hope is both a blessing and a burden, the only thing stronger than the pain. Asha Degree's disappearance changed the way North Carolina responds to child abductions. Her case helped influence statewide Amber Alert procedures and inspired new programs teaching children how to recognize and avoid dangerous situations. In 2003, a billboard was placed along Highway 18 near the spot where she was last seen. It shows her smiling face beside the words, "Do you know what happened to Asha Degree?" It remains there to this day, faded by sun and rain, but still visible to anyone passing through. The message is simple. We have not forgotten. All mysteries leave traces. Even when evidence fades, what remains is a story, the memory of a person who mattered. Asha's story continues in the determination of those who speak her name, in classrooms that discuss her case as a lesson in awareness, in detectives who refuse to label her file cold. Every few years, when the FBI issues another public appeal, thousands share a photo online. The same photo of a bright little girl with a shy smile and hopeful eyes. Somewhere, someone still knows the truth. Maybe they've carried it for years. Maybe they believe it's too late to come forward. But as investigators often say, it's never too late for the truth. When Asha Degree left her home that stormy night in 2000, she stepped into a darkness the world still hasn't fully understood. She left behind a family, a town, and a question that refuses to fade. Why? Her disappearance reminds us that even in small towns, mystery can live next door, and that the search for justice never truly ends until every voice is heard. If you know anything about what happened to Asha Degree, contact the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office, the FBI, or the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, because after 25 years, one truth still matters most. Somewhere, someone knows, and silence has lasted long enough. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. If this story moved you, share Asha's name. Keep her light alive. And remember, every share, every word, every watch helps bring us one step closer to the truth